Hi, my name is Sarah Kern, and I am in Mr. Fortune's Psych 1 LO3 class. We had to, for this project, it's a social psychology experiment project, so we had to conduct an experiment, write an essay, as well as do a video. This is the video portion. And so I did mine over the false consensus effect. And the definition of the false consensus effect is it's a bias in which people tend to believe that their own behavioral choices and judgments as relatively common and appropriate to existing circumstances, while viewing alternative responses as uncommon and deviant or inappropriate. So in other words, people just have a tendency to think or have cognition that their choices or attitudes are shared by the majority. The term false consensus effect, or FCE for short, was coined by Lee Ross, a psychologist at Stanford University, when he conducted his studies in 1977 over this effect. It's an attribution bias effect. It's like a result of attribution bias. And he conducted 4 studies in one of his experiments over this, and some were surveys, some were in-person experiments. And ultimately, he found that the false consensus effect was prevalent in all 4 studies. So for my experiment, I'm going to replicate one of his 4 studies with the survey. My hypothesis is that I expected that there would be significant evidence of the FCE in this study of random volunteers from ages 16 to 60. So I did a survey with 11 questions, and I will show you that survey now. So this is a survey that I emailed to about 40 volunteers. Only 33 of them responded back. 8 of the questions pertained to the experiment, and the other 3 questions were filler. Here's one example of the questions. It's right here. Number 1. What percentage of the population do you estimate would choose each of the following questions? There have been reports in the news recently of multiple gun-related mass shootings. Does there need to be changes made to gun laws? The percentage is adding up to 100%. So what percentage of people do you think gun laws do not need to be changed and gun laws need to be changed? And number 2, do you think there needs to be changes to gun laws? A or B? So of the 8 questions, 2 of them are personal, 1's political, and 1 is situational that I had copied from Lee Ross's study. So let's go to the results. So here are the results laid out on a spreadsheet so that you can see all of them. The first column was the number of questions in which a participant had disproportionately high guess for the percent for the common response, and then it ended up matching up with their choices. So for example, that gun violence question I read earlier, if the participant guessed that 70% of people wanted the gun laws changed and they selected that they wanted the gun laws changed, then that counts as 1. So next I divided each of them by 4, as you can see, because 4 was the total of, even though there were 8 questions, it was 4 because 1 was the percent and 1 was what they felt. And then I divided that number by 4. So 2 by 4 would be 50%, 1 by 4 is 25%, and so on. And then I added up the average of the percents, and ultimately it ended up being 57.58% of questions answers per participant related to the FCE, or the false consensus effect. Also, as you can see, I did female versus male, and I kept track of how many females and how many males there were, and there were 8 males and 24 females. So this was a very disproportionate number, and I highly recommend that if anybody does this experiment again, they ensure they have a more equal number of female to male ratio. So the results of the surveys did give great evidence to the false consensus effect. Many studies have been conducted over the false consensus effect, and a lot of them attempt to explain why it happens. Like, there's been studies about maybe stronger attitudes towards certain subjects do it, or a self-justifying one as well. And it's still kind of unknown why this happens specifically, or what makes people, like, if it's more in certain times or not. And also, my sample size was kind of small. It was 33 people for my thing, and I recommend that if this is ever completed again, that you do a larger sample size to get more accuracy. And thanks for your time.